Bringing us to our sole presentation item this evening, which is an update and discussion regarding the COVID-19 school reopening preparations. Superintendent Trahan.
Thank you. Well, tonight we have our seventh presentation to the board, our probably a fourth one that began back in June, starting to focus on the 2020-21 school year. And so tonight we are at our presentation number 4. We are really thrilled and excited for the start of the new school year. And we're really close to being completely ready for our start date of August 19th. And so we have Julia, good, you sharing, perfect. All right, so tonight's presentation, we have a few of us here this evening. So Julia Wolcott, our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Eric Sable, our Director of Student Services, and Principal Matt Catanzari from Whitehill, and of course myself. So we'll go ahead and get started, and then we'll also take some time for any questions as we go. All righty, so with this, where are we now? Our primary focus right now for planning for the 2020-21 school year is in our our virtual learning academy, otherwise lovingly known as Distance Learning 2.0. And we will begin that on our very first student day, which is Wednesday, August 19th. At the same time that we're planning for our VLA, we're also continuing to plan for the time when we are able to move into in-person learning. But at this time, we're not able to do so. And I've covered that in a previous meeting as well as the town hall. So we know that the soonest, based on information we received from Dr. Matt Willis, is that September 8th would be the very earliest that we could even begin to move into in-person. We have been hearing about a waiver that is available for TK through 6th grade classes or grade levels only. The state has released the background and parameters around the waiver. Now what happens is it moves into our county health department in coordination with MCOE, Marin County Office of Ed, and we will be learning more. They anticipate releasing that information to us later this week. So as of now, we don't have a lot of details on what is entailed with the waiver, other than what of course is available on the state's website, the California Department of Ed and California Department of Public Health. What we know based on information from the state is that if a school district is on if a county is on the state's watch list, then they may not open into in-person learning, we may not bring students in for instruction learning. With regards to the waiver, there are parameters around that. So we would have to have approval or in coordination with our employee groups, our parents, and any community organizations. And we also must receive approval by the county health department. So one of the things that we know at this time is we may not even be eligible for a waiver, because what the state has outlined is that a county must have no less than a certain number of cases per 100,000 students. So what we may not be eligible until we go under 200 cases per 100,000 residents. And with residents in Marin County, this does not include the San Quentin population. It is just in the towns. And so what Matt Willis has come out saying is that what we really need to get to is no more than 19 cases per day in a 14-day period. So we look out over a 14-day. And I've checked back, and over the last 14 days, we had one day where we were at 18, but the remaining days have been anywhere from 71, 59, 60. Now, as of today, our number is 39. So we're quite a ways, we're double where we would need to be even be able to be considered. Matt Willis will be weighing all of that as to whether or not when a school district or school, if it's not a school district, like a private school, for example, applies for the waiver, then he will be weighing a lot of factors in to whether or not he would even approve it. So we're waiting for that. What we know is that right now we're planning for our virtual learning academy. That's where we're putting our emphasis. And when we are ready and able to move into in-person, then we will of course have a transition plan to move into that, because we want children to be prepared for what the protocols for health and safety will be on the campuses. So at the same time though, as we're really moving into and planning for the virtual learning academy, we also need to get parent input. A form will be coming out, an email by the site principals tomorrow to their parents and guardians. And it'll be a parent form that will ask for a couple of things. So I'll get to that on the next page, but that'll be coming out tomorrow. And so before I transition to that, but you can stay on this slide, Julia, is that what's really critical is that we do everything we can individually to get the number of cases down in Marin. The sooner that we do that, the sooner we will all be able to return to in-person instruction. So when we look at planning for a given school year, we always look at balancing our classes. And so whether we have at the elementary level, 2, 3 classes per grade level, on up at the middle school, whatever number might be, the number of sections for 7th grade English, for example, class assignments are a lengthy process that involves a team effort by the teaching staff and administration. There are many factors, and here are just a few listed. Parents who've been in the district before, these will look familiar to you because this has been the long-standing balancing that we utilize for each of our classes. But in 2021, we're faced with additional considerations. So some of those are, there will be some students that even when we're ready to be able to move into in-person on-site instruction, they will be opting for distance learning for a full school year. We also know that we have students who have siblings in the same school or maybe possibly at different schools within the district. And as you'll later see, as Julia starts to describe tonight in the scheduling options, we also need to be able to, when we return to in-person instruction, be able to cohort the students. And one of the primary aspects of that is because students, based on their cohorts, we won't be able to fit all of the students. So in our elementary schools, our class sizes in TK through 3rd grade are 24 maximum, in 4th and 5th grade, 28. And then in middle school, 30. And some of our middle school classes can be larger than that. But what we know is that we have to be able to physically distance the students in the classes. So in order to do that, we don't know exactly what size our cohorts will be, but we know that we're going to physically distance them by 6 feet between students, as well as 6 feet between the students and the teachers. And so one of the big drivers for how we place kids into classes this year is knowing at this time what families are going to choose. So in this parent program selection and input form that'll be coming out tomorrow, we're asking for the parents to please complete it and submit. It's an online form to please complete and submit it by noon on Monday, August 10th, so that the sites can finish class placements and make sure that based on the schedules that we're looking at and the models, that we don't want to have to do class placements more than once in a school year. So if we aren't careful now about how we go into placing students in classes, we would potentially have to revise those, which we know would be very disruptive. What we know from emails we're receiving from parents, questions and concerns, and what we know when we read in the media is that the social emotional impact on children and their development has been very large and very potentially impactful for the students. And so we plan to have all of our same programs with counseling, with support, that kind of thing for students. But we also know that as families are also concerned about developing the relationships, the social emotional relationships in the class, the bond with the teachers, we want to really minimize the need for any redistribution of students. So we are asking for parents, just like many other schools are doing or have already done, is to make a commitment. What I've talked about at the previous board meeting, as well as at the town hall, is that we are asking for families to make a decision for the full school year, but we also know that family situations or how their child feels about that school assignment. Maybe the family situation changes. Maybe the student doesn't do as well as the family anticipated in one of the models, that we want to be able to have that student participate in the other model. So it's either the virtual learning academy for the entire year, or when we're able to have students return to school, that they will be in a hybrid model, which still has some aspect of distance learning, but they are having face-to-face, in-person time in the classroom with the teacher and with their fellow students. So in order to be able to place the students, we need to know what the families are going to choose. So we will be providing that email tomorrow. That information will be provided. As you can see, the balancing of classes is very, very complicated. We also know that so many of our families are experiencing a lot of different factors. I'll use that for families too. Factors, considerations that they've never had to worry about before, whether it's about daycare options, because when we're in regular school, back in the olden days, then families could count on their kids being away from the home for a certain period of time. But we know that starting out the year and potentially families continuing on the virtual learning, that daycare is a very big factor. We also know that families are experiencing potentially very different financial situations than they've ever experienced before. There are just a lot of factors that go into a family situation as well. So we know that we've been getting questions or requests from parents asking to have their children placed with other children. And for whatever reason, we want that a family might have an individual need. The reason we're doing the input form that will include input that families, parents, or guardians can give related to class placement is every family has their own considerations and factors that they're working with too. So we will take a look at whatever a parent puts on the form, but we can't guarantee that we can place students in classes together. That might not allow for a balanced class. So we'll look at the response or the input that parents give, but we can't promise that we'll be able to honor what the requests are. Some families, for example, are also asking, when can we see or get the contact information from other families at our grade level? And we won't be able to give that information out until we're able to get back the parent acknowledgement and release form as part of our back to school packet, because families have to have the opportunity to opt out of a directory. And that's basically what we're being asked to provide, is directory information. So we're not able to provide that now, as a lot of other school districts have done. And it would be great, but we know that families have their own individual needs and considerations that they're working under. Is if families do have an interest in having kids placed with other students, maybe wait until you see what your class assignment is and you get to see who's all in that class. We know that some families have already gone ahead and made those. We are looking at our teachers being able to be somewhat aligned, so that no matter which teacher your child may have at a grade level, or any other, if you're sharing daycare needs or whatever that might be, that at least you'll be having a very similar learning experience, day-to-day, week-to-week kind of a thing, to be able to support whatever a family situation is. Our first and foremost primary responsibility is to serve the students who are in our schools, and that's all of the students. So we have to be able to look out for the academic needs, the social emotional, any services that children may need, as well as then monitoring class size. So the parent input form regarding being able to select the virtual learning academy or the the in-person hybrid, we will be looking for families to make that decision so that we can balance classes, get those class assignments done, and also be able to then release the class assignments. One of the other factors that hasn't changed by the state is that children who have immunization milestones must have those. That has not been waived. So our incoming TKK and the other milestone is in 7th grade. So all those students need to have their immunizations turned in prior to be able to receive their class assignments. So those are due. This hasn't changed. It was this way since we started new student registration, as well as information out for incoming 7th graders, is that information is due to the school site no later than August 12th. So that is next Wednesday, August 12th. Our nurse will then work with any families who haven't submitted the immunizations to be able to follow up with them. There may be a reason why the family hasn't been able to do that, given a lot of healthcare providers haven't been providing in-person services up until recently. So there may be extenuating circumstances that we'll be able to honor in those cases. All right, let me look at my notes, make sure I didn't forget anything on this. I think I covered it, Julia.
All right, thank you, Marcy. As always, we like to report out parent survey results, and it's kind of funny timing because these are, this was the last time that we asked families what they thought, whether or not they thought they might be requesting full distance learning for the year, full virtual learning for the year. And you're going to get another request for information tomorrow because we know that everything is always evolving, and families might be in one position, you know, 1 week, and then several weeks later, they may have new information that is having an impact on the decisions that they need to make for their kiddos. So parents were asked 2 questions. They were asked to respond if they were ready to request full distance learning, full virtual learning for the year. And that's this chart here. And then these were the most likelies, not quite ready to commit, but most likely ready to commit. And now we're asking for a commitment. So these most likelies hopefully will make a decision one way or the other. And hopefully the slides that you're about to see are going to help you with that decision, because we know that I personally think educational decisions for your kids are kind of the hardest decisions that you can possibly make. All right. So a while back, not such a while back, the California Department of Education came out, well, actually the state came out with 2 bills, SB 77 and 98. And then we spent a whole bunch of time trying to figure out what they meant. And then last week on July 28th, the California Department of Education came up with an FAQ about distance learning because everything had become so confusing. And so I have a series of slides here. I'm not going to go into depth on these slides, but they do provide clarity for all of us in terms of, well, what is distance learning? And you know, the people and the instructor are in different locations, and their main mode of connecting with one another is through the cloud. So through online programs and communication, you know, check-ins between teachers and pupils, providing feedback is that 3rd bullet here. And then what type of distance learning model can LEAs would refer to our district. Our district is a, Marcy, remind me what it stands for.
Local Education Agency.
Thank you. Local Education Agency. Have the flexibility to determine the model that's best going to meet the needs of our students and families. And that includes hybrid or mixed delivery models, as long as we are always ensuring the safety of students and staff. And of course, we're going to always be adhering to our state or local public health orders or guidance, and always including the supports that are needed to make sure that every child, especially those who are not performing at grade level, have the access to the curriculum and the support that they need. All righty. And what is considered live instruction? And the other word we use for live instruction is synchronous instruction, meaning sort of at the same time. But a requirement now for our classrooms, for our teachers and students, is daily live interaction. And this daily live interaction is not only between teacher and student, but also the state has recognized the importance of student-to-student interaction and discourse. And so That is going to be a part of our Ross Valley School District Virtual Learning Academy. There will be daily live interaction from teacher to student, or small groups of students, or whole class of students. And then within that, opportunity for students to interact with one another, which is obviously directly related to every child's social emotional well-being. That sense of connection is so important. There is a requirement for daily participation, which is different from daily live interaction. And daily participation is used to track attendance. And as you can imagine, it's kind of tricky to track attendance when you are not in front of your students. So we are tracking attendance through a number of modalities. Showing up in virtual meetings is a part of tracking attendance, as is completing assignments, any interaction and communication between teacher and student, or the parents that are representing in the case of younger students. And again, they're really wanting to emphasize that that daily live interaction is not only between an individual student and a teacher, it's also with their peers. So every effort should be taken to determine the amount of interaction that is needed for students to progress academically and remain engaged in learning and connected to the school community. So we in Ross Valley have been working very, very hard. And by we, I mean your administrative team and many of your teachers, all of your teachers, and some of your teachers that have taken on a greater leadership role, have been designing our virtual learning academy. And in our academy, here's what's important to us. We want to focus on building relationships in community in every classroom. We know, and actually we spent a good amount of time last year focused on and studying and thinking about the importance of relationship and the relationship between relationships and rigor. Knowing that students succeed academically when they feel safe, when they feel connected, and when they feel joyful, which comes from that connection. And along with that, we want to continue the program, the strong and rigorous and engaging program that we have in our schools online and in the cloud, and in a program that addresses the whole child. So along with that SEL education, a part of that is also making sure that we continue to have a robust education of the arts and music and physical education, and all of those things that help our students to become their best selves and grow in all of the ways that they need to grow. We will be using standards-based assessments to figure out how our kids are doing and what they need, and that will guide our instruction of our students. We've been looking at instructional materials that are more geared to distance learning instead of only in-person learning, and we'll be rolling a number of those out. And also looking at educational technologies that help to facilitate some of the magic that happens in a classroom on a daily basis. Again, can't underestimate the importance of student-to-student interactions and discourse. So we'll be looking for that. We want to support our students who need more support, and we want to make sure that we are providing challenging and engaging opportunities for those who need more, who want more challenge. And then for all of our learning, looking for ways to create learning scenarios that provide in-depth learning, authentic problem solving, experiential learning. To be honest, it's tricky when you're doing distance learning. The easiest thing is kind of to revert back a couple of decades to where teaching used to be, and maybe was when some of us went to school. But our teachers are really committed to providing a program that is super rich and active and engaging and meaningful for our students. Along with that, we are very excited to announce that our families will be, and we can't really give you a date for this yet because we are deep in ordering land, but every child in the Ross Valley School District will be receiving a home learning kit, and inside the kit will be things like a student whiteboard and journals and math manipulatives, and in some cases, science supplies and art supplies, things that take the learning off the keyboards and off the monitors and into the hands of students so that experiential learning continues to take place in our students' homes. And I will pass this along to our Director of Student Services, Eric Sable.
Thank you so much, Julia. Really impressive work that is months and months and months in the making, a real testament to this incredible district staff. And also too want to just tip my hat to all the principals who have, in the midst of their quote unquote summer, been responding to staff communications and parent emails and requests. Just absolutely have been so responsive and sensitive to the inquiries of our community, like every community across Marin. We're still navigating through lots of uncertainty, but one thing that we're really certain about is that we know that virtual learning can present real challenges to different groups of students. And we are committed to providing robust support for those vulnerable populations during school closure. So part of these supports, which again are going to come about in the form of either small group instruction from the forum delivered by their classroom teacher, or from other staff, be they program aides, be they instructional aides, and certainly our special education and our literacy teachers will be delivering small group instruction and support as an embedded part of the virtual learning model. We're also going to be engaging really creatively with our broader staff to really identify very early on those students that are just kind of not showing up to classes. And as Julia pointed out earlier, you know, we want attendance for sure as a minimum, but we also want engagement. And so that communication, especially up front, especially as we launch the year in August into early September, we really want to generate positive momentum. Of course, we're all hoping for the earliest possible return to live classes, but not knowing exactly when that might be. We need to know that we've accounted for all of our over 2,000 students. So from our the special education lens, we know that our students with IEPs have specific goals and specific accommodations to support their progress in meeting standards along with their peers. And so our special education teachers, program aides, one-to-one support staff are going to be in regular collaboration with general education teachers. They're going to be attending virtual classes when possible so that they can really understand what's going on for their students and support them in a robust manner. Parent meetings as needed, of course, those will have to be virtual, but just like normal circumstances, our staff is going to be responsive to emails, to phone calls. If we need to set up Zoom meetings for team meetings in terms of how to best support students, then of course we're going to do that. Also too, as Julia pointed out, our first priority is to ensure the wellness of our students and of course our staff and community as well. Not only physical wellness, but social and emotional wellness. And so we're going to be working with our school counselors and social workers to really do that proactive outreach. You know, even on our school campuses, we'll have counselors that host groups to work on different things. There's no reason why we can't do that in virtual learning. And then also too, ongoing support to really help our students navigate those different virtual learning platforms. As Julia mentioned, we have a number of different technologies and platforms that we're fortunate to work with. But also too, that can be kind of confusing, especially for the younger kids and sometimes for families. And so how can we really provide meaningful support to those students and families to ensure they really know how to get the most out of these different platforms. So moving forward, something that we are actively investigating along with other districts in county is the possibility of offering on-site academic and social emotional support services to our most vulnerable student populations. That includes students in special education, our English language learners, our students that are academically at risk, and our foster homeless youth in district. And these supports could take the form of one-to-one supports, especially through the lens of counseling, or as appropriate through the lens of delivering an assessment, let's say, in special education, or they could be small group in nature. It could be small group instruction, much like would happen in a resource learning center. And absolutely, we are going to make sure to employ, if we have the opportunity to do this, all safety protocols to ensure the health and well-being of students and staff. And you see the picture here, that's Ms. Hom, Brookside, room 13. We had 4 successful weeks of extended school year, and that's a service provided to students of higher needs in special education. We were able to serve 9 students from preschool to grade 3 with an amazing summer school, extended school year staff, employing all those different safety measures. It was a tremendous learning and growth experience for the students and also for us as a district, where we were able to employ different safety measures such as daily temperature checks, hand washing and sanitation, social distancing. As you can see, the students spread apart there in the classroom, outdoor learning, which is another key aspect that we understand is one of the more safe means of being in groups, etc. So we learned a tremendous amount from our extended school year experience this July. And if state and county health parameters and the waiver process allow, we will look to provide this in-person support again to our students of greatest need. Until then, we are going to be committed to making that virtual support as robust as possible. And I think I'm passing it back to either Julia or Matt.
I think I'm on again. Thank you, Eric. It's so exciting to hear about how well the ESY went. Pretty great to see kids. We all miss kids. So our group of very hardworking teachers and administrators and classified has been working together to put together schedules, and you're going to see some sample schedules in a moment. But things that we were keeping in mind, first and foremost, we're looking for flexibility and understanding that different activities take different periods of time, and we don't want to be too rigid. We want to allow teachers flexibility and families flexibility as well. We want appropriate and responsive instruction, and we understand that some of our kids and some of our families don't want to be stuck to a computer for the day. And we also have families that are really looking to have a lot of live interactions. So we believe that we've come up with something that's very balanced for our students. And we also are really tapping into our teacher expertise and knowledge of best practices. And so providing our teachers with regular collaboration time and professional development time. We will have some newly minted virtual learning coaches that will be working with us this year, teacher coaches who will be there to support their colleagues as well. And I will pass the baton to Matt here. And Matt, if you don't mind beginning by pointing out our Monday change.
All right, thank you, Julia. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Yeah, so thank you for the opportunity to share White Hill's schedule. Before I get started, I just want to thank all of our teachers at White Hill, all the parents that, all spring and over the summer gave amazing feedback. Thank you, Julia and Marcy, the members of the teaching learning group that we met all summer, and even the elementary teachers that were part of that group. They were great in sharing or listening to our ideas and giving some feedback that kind of helped shape where we are today. And I'm really excited to share out what we're going to do. And as Julia mentioned, the first thing, and I have to give credit to Carrie Adriatico, most of you know and love her. She came up with the idea or the possibility to move our early release day to Monday. And one of the reasons that came up was because we have 6 Mondays throughout the school year that are holidays of some kind. And our teachers want to try to see as many of their classes as they possibly can at the beginning of the week. So we brought that to the table and it seemed like a great idea. The teachers were on board. So that's the first shift, is that our early release day is going to be on Monday. So in this distance learning schedule on Monday, our classes are about 40 minutes long. We do not meet for 0 period on Monday. That's one shift from our traditional schedule. The classes are 40 minutes. There's 10 minutes between classes. And it's going to be a great time for our teachers to kind of set the stage for the week for our students. And as Julia mentioned earlier, there's going to be daily live instruction. There's going to be attendance taken in during every period, just like we would when we were in person. And then at the end of the day, the school day ends at 2:15 and our teachers will have their meetings that usually took place on Wednesday and Mondays. So that is the first shift. And then the remainder of the week, 0 period meets at 8 a.m. And every one of our students after zero period will participate in a 20-minute advisory. And this advisory time is really a great time for us to kind of set the stage for the day. It's going to be office hours on Tuesdays and Thursdays. On Wednesday, our counselors are going to have some check-in opportunities for students. And on Friday, some community building. But in addition to those things that we have listed there, is going to basically be a daily check-in. Make sure your Zooms are ready for the day, what's going on, kind of like a planner check, what is due. And the advisory teacher is really going to be an advisor for their group of students during that time period. And if you're familiar with White Hill, advisory is also our 6th period. So when you look through this schedule, you won't see a 6th period, but when you see a schedule, a paper schedule on Aries, from Aries, that would be the 6th period class. And then as you go through, you see our periods 1, 3, and 5 meet on Tuesday and Thursday. Periods 2, 4, and 7 meet on Wednesday and Friday. And those class periods are 1 hour and 20 minutes long. And as Julia mentioned earlier, we feel that 1 hour and 20 minutes is the best way to model, to simulate a traditional class period of in-person instruction. During our in-person instruction, our teachers are not up lecturing the entire time. And that is not going to be the case while we are in distance learning format. Our teachers are not going to be lecturing via Zoom the entire 1 hour and 20 minutes. But this does give us an opportunity to have our teachers do some small group instruction, do some student-to-student interaction with breakout rooms, things of that nature. So there will be live instruction, there will be attendance, and there will be a lot of other ways for students to connect with each other and to connect with their teacher during that 1 hour and 20 minutes. And that was really, really important for us. Our lunch is 45 minutes on Tuesday through Friday. It's only 40 minutes, I think. 30 minutes on Monday. But we have lunch and clubs. We want to hold our virtual clubs. We want there to be as much social interaction as possible. So we'll have a club schedule, teachers that do clubs through our YES Foundation. We're fortunate that we can still do that. And we look forward to having our students participate in as many clubs as possible. And then you can see in the afternoons, they change from Tuesday to Wednesday. And on Tuesday, we have some teacher collaboration time built into the schedule. And one of the things that we are really committing to at White Hill is that we want our same subject, same grade level teachers to really be in sync with what's going on. And they need to be doing their delivery method may be different because they need to be authentic to themselves when they're teaching. But as far as assessments and assignments are concerned, they're going to be pretty much the same when you have the same subject, same grade teacher. So teacher collaboration is built into the schedule for that reason. And we're really happy that we can do that. Our teachers, I think, are very pleased that they can have some of that time to work together. And then we have office hours on Wednesday and Friday. So I know Maria is listening in as well, and I'm going to give her an opportunity to chime in, see if she has anything that I may have forgotten to mention.
I don't think you did. I think it looked pretty good.
And I want to thank Maria too for this is only one of about 17 White Hill schedules and the one that we're landing on at the moment, and we're really excited about it.
Thank you so much, Matt, and thank you, Maria, as well. The two of you have done an amazing job of spearheading the final landing on a schedule, and there have been so many iterations, which just goes to show how hard we're working to make sure that we're creating an environment that mimics the great teaching and learning that takes place pre-COVID. All right.
Before we go on, if we could also just, hey, Matt, would you mind for a second addressing what would happen with jazz band? We do have a jazz band teacher. So for students who are in jazz band, when would they?
Yes.
Yeah.
So jazz band typically starts at 7 a.m. So if you think about what happens in a morning jazz band, students are playing instruments. We're going to be looking out for families and looking out for neighbors of families of jazz band. Jazz band probably is not a good time to be playing music at 7 a.m. from the house. So our new jazz band teacher, Mr. Wade, is going to be reaching out to families very soon and kind of just pull families about when the best time to teach for that group to meet. And it may be after school. So if you're a jazz band student or parent of a jazz band student, be on the lookout. We're gonna try to figure out what is the best time because the 7 a.m. playing the clarinet or playing some brass instrument probably isn't going to be accepted by the neighbors too well.
Would wake everybody up. Time to
Yep.
go to work. All right. And so now I'm going to take you through a sample elementary schedule. And this is a 4th to 5th grade schedule. A reminder, and maybe it's new news to some of you, the mandated instructional minutes changes from grade level to grade level based on developmental appropriateness. So at the TK through kindergarten level, there's 180 instructional minute minimum. And 1st through 3rd grade, we've got 230. And then 4th actually through 8th grade, it's 240. Although as you can see, our 6th through 8th grade have more instructional minutes as we believe is appropriate than our 4th and 5th grade students do. And right here, you're only, by the way, seeing half a schedule because I couldn't fit it on one slide. So basically, we're looking at 3 instructional blocks in a day. And our elementary schedule will mimic our middle school schedule in that, of course, the early release will also be on Mondays so that we can keep all of our families and students aligned within the district. And then within an instructional block, and it won't always be the same, this is just sort of a guide here. Sorry, I'll go back and say our elementary students would like to start the day with a morning meeting to touch base with their kids, give them a sense of the day, say hello, kind of talk about how things are going, and then they would move into that first instructional block. And you can kind of think about an instructional block having 3 parts. The mini lesson being the direct instruction. And the reason that that is blue is because that may be an asynchronous, it could be a live lesson, but a teacher may decide to make that asynchronous. So it could be pre-recorded. If it's not pre-recorded, if it's a live lesson, the teachers will record it and post it on their Google Classroom, or we'll be using Seesaw, a different learning platform for TK through 2nd grade, so that students can access it at a later time. Anything that's green is potentially live instruction. So student work time is a light green because it might be whole group. The students may all be on a Zoom, and the teacher may be coordinating breakout rooms during that time where the kids are virtually put into small groups to work on some kind of a task, or it could be small group work. So that's up to the teacher, and then the teacher's going to make that decision based on the task at hand and the needs of the students. And then you've got the debrief and the reflection, which is such an important part of learning, and that's a live portion of the lesson. And so then taking a break and moving into the second instructional block. And then somewhere in there, we have lunch and we have another instructional block. And then in the afternoons here, we have asynchronous, so not live, most of the time, art, PE, and music. But I met with our art, music, and PE heads this week and had a really great conversation with them. And they want to be able to deliver some live instruction. So they're looking at finding a way to schedule that in during, sometimes during the afternoon and sometimes during the day within individual classes so that they can really get to know and work with the students. And then the office hours time here is really meant to be there for teachers to check in with kids. So that's where you would see some one-to-one work happening, or in some cases, they might be pulling small, what we call strategy groups to work on a specific skill that kids need. It's also a time that parents can check in with teachers and that sort of thing. And then also pointing out, as Matt talked about with the middle school schedule, that we have incorporated collaboration time for our teachers, both within their site, and that collaboration could be within a site or across the district. It could be our 3rd and 4th and 5th grade teams getting together to talk about something that's going on and sharing ideas and best practices. And I pass it to Marcy.
All right, and Julia, just if we could go back 1 second, I just want to be make sure it's clear of how the days are structured. So you have Mondays are virtual learning day. When we, if for example,
I think we're moving on to hybrid right now.
Oh, and you're doing that later.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect. Okay,
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Thank you.
But before I move on, because I just thought of something I'd love to be able to say. So this schedule is just kind of a sketch of what it will look like. And it'll be similar for the other grades, but the instructional minutes change based on the grade level. And I'm working with principals to create a template that everyone will be using, and then grade level teams within sites will set the schedule. And our teachers will be posting kind of a schedule at a glance for the week on their learning platforms and also daily agendas. And now I'll pass it to Marcy.
Thank you. Alrighty, so as we're looking at how our school year, or potential from what we're going to be starting out in a virtual learning academy, and whatever time, it may not even be in the 2021 school year, we're not quite sure as to a full return. But what we know is that the updates and guidance are continually being released and revised. We continue to monitor them and to plan accordingly. So based on everything that is coming out, and we're in concert in working with our Marin County Health and Human Services Department, as well as Marin County Office of Ed, so that we're not moving too fast in any of our return phases. As you've heard me say over and over again, is our priority is student and staff health and safety. So everything we're doing and planning for is with that first and foremost in mind, as well as we keep hearing almost on a weekly basis that they're learning more and more and more about COVID-19. And so that's factoring into all of the updates, the guidance, everything that's being released. But what we know at this time, based on the information we have, is we will be starting out with Virtual Learning Academy. If you've heard us talk about it, it's a distance learning 2.0 with daily live synchronous instruction. Some of the questions that we've been getting are, for example, around how to support parents. Well, there will be support for the parents that are helping their children with the technology. So if any family or parent guardian needs support, they will know who they can reach out to. It'll start with the classroom teacher, and then it will go into something that Julia Sean Maher, our director of IT, can help with. So there's a lot of support there for families. We're also getting questions about, well, how can families help us? So we will be sending out information soon. We're finalizing all the ways in which we do need that support. We've had families offer support financially, fundraising, for example. Do we need help and support getting our outdoor learning environments up and running? All those kinds of things. So we will be letting families know how they can support their teachers, their classrooms, the schools, and that kind of thing. So that'll all be coming. We know that we want to develop a class community. That's first and foremost for the the social emotional support of all the children, is developing that class community. And some of those strategies, like how do we teach social emotional learning, that'll first and foremost be done in the classroom with the teachers, with the support of any of our additional support staff, our counselors, school psychologists. There will be other support there for that too. It's hard, I know, to imagine, like, what could distance learning school look like when we're so used to the in-person model, and that's what we're used to. But please know that all of the elements of what makes up school, not just the academics, but all of the activities that go into a school, they will need to be limited for the 2021 school year. We won't be taking field trips, for example, but there will be virtual types of activities or field trips that the kids will be able to engage in. So there will be more than just getting math, English, science, history, PE, art, music, that kind of thing. One of the other questions that comes up is around daycare. As you may recall, my talking about at the town hall meeting in the last board meeting is working with the YMCA to be able to provide on-campus support. The Y is interested in and is planning on being a community hub to provide support for students and families. And that information, we just received the flyer this afternoon. So we'll be sending that out to all of our families to be able to sign up. There are sliding scales, there's support. Right now, the YMCA program is planning, while we're in distance learning, to be housed at the Wade Thomas School, which has been, the YMCA has been operating in the summer on that campus. We also know that once we're able to return to in-person school, that we won't be able to house the entire program there, and they will be moving throughout our schools, our district, also possibly into vacant buildings if needed, if there's that much of a need for that service. So they're looking at providing support for students, not just daycare, but for class support with their work. So stay tuned for that. That would be going on all throughout the year. So as we know, in our phase-in is moving into the Virtual Learning Academy, as Eric talked about, with some in-person support. We know that that'll be with our most vulnerable, high needs students and moving into that. And that also will be in concert by what we're allowed to do to bring students onto campus. So working with the Marin County Health Department. And then the next phase will be when we're able to have kids return to school for in-person instruction. And we're looking at, in order to have them spaced, distance spaced, we'll need to create cohorts, and those students will need to remain in the cohorts. Then receiving questions around, well, what is it going to look like and how will school look when we go into that? Those are the plans that we're working on right now simultaneously with the full distance. So for example, our health and safety protocols. So what will it look like for the personal protective equipment that students wear, that staff wear? How do we provide them training and support for being able to do that? What about the hand washing, the sanitizing, the distancing? So we have all of our schools are in the process of getting ready for people to be on the campus, whether it's to start out with the teaching staff from teaching from their classroom in this distance learning model, and then eventually bringing kids onto the campus. We need to know what the flow is. What's the ingress and egress and the way that people travel around the campus to be sure that we're maintaining 6 feet of distance. All of those plans are being coordinated and worked on right now. The outdoor learning environments. We have always planned for and have talked about in our other meetings, presentations, where we do have, and the principals are working on, they've already identified those outdoor learning environments. So looking in some cases to be able to get the shade necessary for those, and how schedules might be in order for classrooms to utilize those outdoor learning environments. Another item that we're working on is, for example, in order we know that, let me back up, sorry, for teachers when they're teaching, as you saw in the picture that Eric showed, that was Miss Hom with a face covering on. And it can be hard for teachers when they're teaching, for kids to need to see their mouth in order to see, like if they're teaching reading, for example, they need to be able to see the formation of the teacher's mouth to see what that letter sound is. And also we want students to be able to actively engage. So all of our teaching staff will have these, they've been ordered, they're arriving, is what's called a humanity shield. And it's a face covering that has a cloth drape. And so that way the teacher does not have to wear a face mask that covers their nose and their mouth at the same time, but it's a clear shield that they can use. We know that the students and staff can bring their own face covering, but for anybody who doesn't have them, as we talked about a number of meetings ago, the state has provided a certain amount of hand sanitizer, cloth, and other grade type of face coverings for children and for adults. They're different sizes. So we also know that we have to plan for what happens when students and staff get sick, either needing to be absent from school, their work, due to illness. What happens if they become sick while they're on the campus? So we have identified, each school has identified sick rooms, for example, or different kinds of nurses locations. And then what's going to be really critical this year, we're going to ask families to make sure on the emergency card that they have identified folks beside themselves as the parent or guardian who can pick up the child if they are needing to go home for the day. We need to be able to space students if they're not feeling well. We also need to be able to identify under what are the demonstrated symptoms that the child or the staff member is demonstrating that then might pose their need to be tested. So we haven't received the guidelines or how that will work from the county yet. They're working on increasing their testing, their test locations, and their ability to report timely. We know we have some time for that because we know that we won't be going into any in-person type of instruction any sooner than September 8th. And if we don't make it off the state's watch list, and for some reason we don't apply or are not granted the waiver for TK through 6th grade, then we know that we'll be continuing into distance learning longer. We're also in the process of getting plexiglass dividers so that when teachers are working with small groups or maybe in a English language learner activity, that the child and the teacher, it doesn't mitigate the need to maintain 6 feet of distance, but at least it allows another added protective barrier. All of our school offices will have plexiglass barriers so that the administrative assistant, school office staff are, there's a barrier between them and anybody who might come in. So working on the signage, our cleaning, disinfecting protocols. So all of this is being worked on simultaneous to our working on our virtual learning academy and getting that up and running. What we know is when we're able to return to in-person instruction, we will be having a phased in ability to do that. We know that we have to train students, we have to give information to families about which, for example, if there needs to be ingress and egress, staggered start and end times for the classes or the grade levels at a school, that those specific schedules, so as what we've seen tonight is what Julia and Matt laid out, that's the actual schedule, but it could be that it becomes a little bit modified to allow for ingress and egress onto the campus. So a lot of plans going on, and I do want to also thank, as you've heard us talk about before, Julia talked about tonight, our teaching and learning team. We also have the operations team, which is made up of teachers, classified employees, and administrators as well, making all of these plans to be able to, when we're ready to return to in-person school. We hope that as we're working on our hybrid in-person and virtual, that then we would be able to phase into some point, hopefully this school year. Maybe we would be able to have an in-person with a modified day, which could be all students returning to in-person instruction 5 days a week, and not the model that you'll be seeing in a minute, as Julie will be described with the hybrid. And then eventually the full return, which means that we're back to our pre-COVID days with a whole lot of knowledge about flipped teaching technology tools that we can bring into our all in-person schooling. But we don't know when that'll all happen, but we're planning for all of these eventualities, whether it's this school year on into next school year, that everything will have a phased aspect to it, so that there will be plenty of time and notice to families of when we will be starting any kind of in-person instruction and being ready to phase into that. So there will be a lot more information coming. And let me just make sure, I think I covered everything that I have on my list. Julie, did I forget anything aspect, or anybody else who might be on?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
All right. So the hybrid model that we have landed on is what we are now calling the VAB, with virtual learning on Mondays, and then the cohort A having a Tuesday, Wednesday in-person learning experience, and cohort B having a Thursday, Friday in-person learning experience. And what's kind of neat about this model is you can think of this as one teacher's classroom here, and that they have 3 cohorts. So for example, a 3rd grade teacher at any site might have 3 or 4 kids that have selected distance learning for the year. So those 3 or 4 kids are in cohort C. And in fact, I think I set up a slide like this. There we go. Call it 5. So cohort C would have these 5 students there on distance learning every single day of the week. They join cohort A and cohort B on Mondays to make a full class of 24. All 24 students on this day are virtual learning. On Tuesday, cohort A, 10 kiddos, are coming to school for in-person instruction, while cohort B and C are joining together for virtual learning, and so on. And so you can see that you've always got 24 kids in the class, and on any day of the week, you have a different cohort in front of you. What's also nice about the hybrid model is that it would very likely, at least initially, follow pretty closely with the schedule that we've put together for distance learning, so that there's not a huge transition for our students when they move from full virtual learning to a hybrid of in-person and virtual learning. And that brings us to our last slide with this beautiful quote from John Lewis. Though I may not be here with you, I urge you to answer the highest calling of your heart and stand up for what you truly believe. In my life, I have done all I can to demonstrate that the way of peace, the way of love and nonviolence is the more excellent way. Now it is your turn to let freedom ring. And I have this quote here not only to acknowledge the passing of one of our great heroes of the United States, or of all humanity, but also to recognize that we continue to keep equity in the forefront of all of our decision making. And there are lots of decisions that we are making right now. And it just remains so important and critical to our work. And I believe that that is it. It is time for comments and questions.
Thank you guys so much. So my takeaway is that there are so many balls in the air and plans being made and contingencies, and that what we know for sure is how we're going to start. And we're planning for every possible scenario that could unfold, but we don't really even know when or what that will be.
I think we have more of a sense of what than we ever have. I think the when is really hard. But I feel like we've got a strong what on virtual learning and what that's going to look like. And I think that the segue, the transition into hybrid learning, we are really developing our sense of that as well.
Okay. So I was wondering, as you were, there's so much talk out in the world about you have to bring everybody back right now. Well, these private schools are bringing everybody back. My school is going to have 27 hours of in-person instruction every day. And I just wonder if that's actually possible. Is there anyone who will be having right away, all day in-person instruction?
No.
Okay. Okay, so this really is like, and the waivers are not allowable until such time as we've reached a point of fewer than 20 per 100,000.
That is my understanding. That in the a YouTube video I watched, I put here under our resources for this item is listed as a resource. This is the top one. So that's a link there to Dr. Willis's YouTube video that, oh, I'm sorry, 7:31. So it's Friday, it's the second one. So I keep updating the resources here that we keep utilizing so any person can view those as well. But that what Dr. Willis is saying is that he will make that decision if and when a school district or a school, sorry, I'm going to keep using school district because in our case, it has to be the superintendent who applies for the waiver, but that he would take a look at it. What I've heard him say is that we need to get our numbers down before he will even consider being able to approve one of the waivers. And the waivers apply for school districts, charter schools, and private schools. They're only applicable to grades TK through 6.
Okay, so I just want to be sure because I know that there are so many things that likely will become feasible that you guys are taking into account. And Marcy just gave a super comprehensive list. And I want to make sure that people aren't irritated that we're not running out and getting the waiver right now because it isn't available or possible.
That is correct.
All right, great. I mean, I know that's irritating to a lot of people. It just is, but I think it's less irritating if folks understand that it's not something that we can affect change on.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Colleagues, questions?
Marcy, yeah, Marcy, it's Mark, and to the team, I just want to thank you so much for the remarkable presentation that's built on the past several weeks. I know that there's been so much work and so much effort in trying to make tough decisions, working within sort of impossible circumstances to come up with what you've just presented. And I just want to tell you how much I truly appreciate it. Just one last thing about John Lewis, Julia, even in the divided world that we live in DC, when John was in the House and he would take the microphone, everybody would quiet and everybody would listen to him. And it's something that was always remarkable to me in those particular moments when I would see that he had a moral authority that really transcended so much of what we unfortunately have to live with from DC today. But thank you all for this. Thank you all for the deep caring that you have for our kids. And I just really appreciate everything that you've done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. And truly, we could not have done this alone. The countless hours that everyone who's been involved in one way or the other, whether they've been directly involved on a committee or they have provided information to a member of the committee, but to everybody's thinking and planning for this next school year, it really does take an entire team to be able to do this heavy lifting and get us ready for August 19th.
Hey guys, this is Ryan. I have a couple things of note. I match Mark's sentiments, and I'm sure many people listening in, if you really did listen into this, there's no way that anyone will come out without a deep dive into the thought processes that go on and into this type of structure that is being put out here in a very in a time where there's not a lot of knowns. This is about as close as you can get. I was also impressed of the forward thinking of the 7 a.m. jazz band concept. We often forget those little things, but if anyone's ever heard this jazz band, these people need to work and these people need to practice because they are amazing and incredible. And so I love the fact that we're actually thinking about how to make that work at a time like this. There was also something that I think maybe have gone unthought by many people, but wasn't for me, with those home learning kits. I know it sounds trivial to some people, but I'm very impressed. That home learning kit, I believe there's a tactile aspect to learning, and it almost gears kids up to a back to school shopping to get a protractor, some pencils, and some new pens and a fresh pad of paper, and they get the mindset, it's time to go learn, let's go get this going. And I think something like a home learning kit I never would have thought of that in a million years, but I think is a very small aspect to a great imagination and a way to get kids engaged and happy to get engaged with such a small concept as a home learning kit. So I didn't want that to go unnoticed because I'm very impressed. And as you know, I'm not easily impressed, but with this team, I'm continually very impressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan. We're having fun putting them together.
Marcy and Julia, this is Annalisa. I want to echo what both Ryan and Mark have already said and express my incredible thanks for your clear care for students and staff and the safety of everyone and the learning, and not just the learning that happens in topics and content areas like math and English and science and social studies, but also the care to put in what I call specials, or what you might call specials, art and music and PE, and also caring for clubs and making sure that kids have different ways to connect with each other. And I also love what Ryan said about just sort of the tactile learning. I think all of those places and ways of taking care of our students is wonderful. So thank you for that. I also just had one question about, and I believe you talked about it already, but I just know I've been asked this often about kids who are in the same grade level learning similar things at the same time. And I wondered what guidance you have provided to teachers of, let's say, all second graders across our district, or at least at different schools, and on working together to keep similar schedules.
Yeah, I mean, we'll be working together to put just the general schedule together. But for example, we have grade level meetings coming up, one where we're going to be diving into mathematics. Happily, both actually the elementary and the middle school mathematics programs. At the elementary level, it's Bridges in mathematics, and at middle school, it's CPM, have developed a lot of virtual learning documents. But more importantly, they've done the heavy lifting of going through and identifying the essential standards and figuring out kind of how to mitigate any learning loss that may have occurred. So all of those conversations, we're really just trying to provide a platform for teachers and give them the time that they're going to need to collaborate with one another, so that they are in sync and that they are sharing best practices.
That's great. Thank you, Julia.
Of course.
One thing I did forget to mention in terms of support for families is technology. And Sean Maher, our director of IT, will be sending out information to ask families if maybe any of our new families to the district need access to technology or access to the internet, as well as any of our families who were with us last year. Maybe they didn't need to access, check out a Chromebook, for example, but maybe this year they do. So that information will be forthcoming as well.
And just to add onto that, to be clear, families are more than welcome to ask to take out more than one loaner. So they don't need to necessarily share a computer amongst their 2 or 3 kids. Each child can have their own device for this work.
Thank you, Julia.
Hey, it's Wesley talking. I won't won't repeat what everyone else has said. I just wanted to also offer my thank you for all the hard work and all of the careful thought that's gone into this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh, wow, it's kind of overwhelming, you guys. Thank you for not being overwhelmed.
Fooled you.
What?
I said fooled you.
Oh, yay! You're so sneaky. Alrighty, any final bits that you want to add?
What time do you think tomorrow it will be, by the end of the day, that people will get the email on making some of the decisions in terms of their elections for next year?
Great question, Wesley. We are hoping to get it out by noon. And so we're doing the last final touches on it in the morning and getting it over back to the principals for them to share out. They all had a hand in developing it. And so we just start looking at it one more time, but hopefully by noon is when we're looking to get it out.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. All right, are we ready to move on?
Yes.
Yeah?
Onward.
Okay.